Okay, so we'll test this and see if make sure we're hearing. Okay. So I'm going to give a quick and dirty really fast for anyone that was watching this. So I'll just review what I just discussed for anyone listening or reviewing this after the fact. The first couple of minutes we were muted, so our apologies. So the meeting was called to order by Vice Chairman Ayers, and we took roll. And at this point, we started the discussion on legislative priorities. I've sent the board VACO's legislative priorities a few times now. We're a little late in the process, but there's still time to advocate for stances at the state level. My request is I'll simply start by asking if there are any positions in the VACO package, which hopefully you've had a chance to review, that you don't necessarily support or any that you wish to emphasize. While we only have a limited window of time in this work session, we could go through the entire list if you like. It is fairly lengthy. Or we could key in on certain areas at the board's pleasure. There are kind of two options here. If you would like to simply support the entire VACO package in some way or generally support it, a letter could be generated for that for the chair to sign and for us to send to our legislative representatives in the General Assembly. And you could do that by consensus in this work session without taking a vote. Or if you would like to do something more official, there is a place on the regular agenda that you can make a motion to take a vote. Mm-hmm. So now that everybody can hear us, we'll get back to it.
The one concern I have deals with under the energy package, with renewable energy generations and storage, where they support maintaining local authority to address it. And I'm in favor of that, except I think adjacent localities that may be affected by another locality's decision, we ought to have some input. For example, the bottom top windmills, they're right on the line practically. Mm-hmm. Have a greater effect on the citizens of Rockbridge that are going to be staring right into it than it will be the citizens of Top, which will be benefiting from them if in fact they ever get built. But it just doesn't seem right that one locality can just, yeah, we're going to do this and don't even ask for the concern of the adjoining locality.
I would certainly agree with that. What about the priority is the broadband? Obviously, that is our priority. Is there anything that we can do to strengthen, to emphasize more strongly that we support that?
A letter could be constructed such that there is emphasis on continued focus and emphasis on rural broadband deployment and funding.
Spencer, is there anything here that stands out to you
I'm going to be very honest with you. I went through this at a high level back when it first came out. My thought was to go over it in more detail this weekend with recommendations, but I've been busy on some other stuff all weekend.
Sure. Okay.
And maybe it's just me, but I think a lot of stuff in here it's just in there every year.
Exactly.
So I don't see a lot of striking
The per diem for inmate.
That's where I was just looking. Now, of course, the board has already, I mean, that could be added to a letter, but the board already has taken a very specific position advocating for the state to fund the true cost of incarceration, and also to encourage the state to take the state responsible inmates in a timely manner. And that is on page 12. Well, that's the start of it.
Hmm.
These, as Supervisor Lyons said, a lot of these are carryover from previous years. And there are some new ones, of course. But I will say this, VACO has typically been in my opinion, a very good advocate for localities. Not all localities look at everything the same way. For example, an adjacent locality might not, on a large windmill project, might not have the same viewpoint that she was on the other foot. So VACO can't cover everybody's position perfectly, but I will say they typically do a very good job
Mhm.
in looking out for the unique positions that local governments find themselves in. Additionally, some of these are going to would directly impact us if VACO's positions are either supported or their unsupported positions are denied at the General Assembly level. For example, uranium mining doesn't really have an impact here presently, but stormwater programs do, supporting the cost of of supporting a stormwater program. That's pretty much every locality needs to deal with that.
Right, but are you saying they currently do not support a stormwater management? Were you using that as an example, as
No,
an unfunded mandate?
They do. I mean, originally that program could be ceded to, I believe DEQ was going to be, would run the program. Most counties that I know of opted to have their own program, to have a little more local oversight over that program. There's not a tremendous amount of money that comes in to support that program, but this is just a general statement to support those programs. In other words, that's on page 10, supports the state funding that enables local governments to fully satisfy resource and funding needs associated with local stormwater management programs. that was a pretty big deal back around 2000, I'd say 11, 12, and 13 in that area when some of these mandates came forward. So what I've got so far is Supervisor Lyons' statement that, or request that anything we send would support renewable energy, but would like for adjacent localities to be able to weigh in on projects in an adjoining locality. And then the second thing I've got is emphasis on rural broadband deployment and funding.
And there was quite a bit on childcare and
Page 19.
whether it seems to be in 4 education, childcare, and development block grants. And 19 as well.
That's on page 4.
Mm-hmm. No. I support that.
And again, I think the idea would be to, if there's very, very specific emphasis on one thing, really, the board really feels strongly about, that we add that in, but not to diminish
Exactly.
other areas. So you do whatever y'all want, but if you
No, I'm
you
fine
do
with the 2 that
everything, then you start.
I understand. I'm fine with the 2.
It's the board's pleasure. There's no rush at all. But you don't. If you're in agreement, we don't have to, go through the whole work session. We can pause and take a break for the regular meeting, but I'm not pushing it all.
Well, we certainly have time, though. On page 2, regulation of home-based businesses and how it might apply to us. VACO opposes any legislation that limits or restricts local authority to regulate home-based businesses, including short-term rentals, regardless of whether services or goods are purchased through an online hosting platform. There at one point, the state was saying that they were going to be monitoring these sites, these platforms, instead of the local governments. I haven't heard an update on that. Remember?
Yeah, and I recall some discussion on that. I apologize, I don't have all the detail on it, but again, this position would be that localities would not be limited specifically in their ability to regulate.
Yes, the only other concern I might have is with finance, and sure it doesn't, you can't just hit one area. Every time I turn on the news, the state's going to provide funding for education and law enforcement, and all this money to spend, but I don't see where they really take into account the positions they don't fund, or the amount of money that's going to cost the localities by them funding just their share of positions. For example, like let's say the sheriff's department, we have more deputies than the comp board covers. So you just can't increase the payment to the comp board positions and not realize that you're having an impact on the localities, because they're going to have to pick up all those other positions. And I'm sure the same is, well, I know the same is true with education. You know, they're only going to fund SOQ positions, and of course we have many more than that. Probably the jail has more jailers than, you know, it's called for. So if they would just somehow keep in mind that, oh, it's good that what they're doing, they don't want to create a burden on the localities by us having to pick up the parts that aren't covered.
You'd rather just have a bigger share.
Well, I'd rather have them cover everybody.
Exactly.
Is the person not pertaining to this?
I don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry. It doesn't quite pertain to this, but if we forego the tax on gasoline, does the county get any of that?
I don't know.
Does the county get any of the state taxation on gasoline?
I'm not 100% sure, but I'm not aware that
We've never seen it on our revenue.
yeah,
on our
I've
budget.
never seen.
That's what I was really wondering, in fact, how it would affect our revenue if it is, but maybe it's not.
Does the state give us the power to tax fuel?
No.
So that's not a possibility anyway.
Not that I'm aware of.
Not that I'm
Very
suggesting
few things that-
such a thing. I am not suggesting such a thing. Oh,
There are not many things that the state authorizes the locality to tax on. And it's different obviously between cities and counties in some cases.
well. Gentlemen,
May I
sure.
phrase and make sure I have it right under finance? Supervisors lines, to paraphrase, the General Assembly needs to take into account local costs associated with state supported salary increases. For example, raises for SOQ positions, compensation board positions do not account for the additional local positions, which must then be funded by the locality.
Very well done.
So far I have 4 things.
Okay.
The one I just mentioned, The energy statement, renewable energy, and rural broadband deployment and funding, and jail, which we've already covered, but we can re-emphasize at this time.
I can't think of the name of the erroneous tax assessment where we have to pay back the 10% interest.
Yeah.
I didn't mention that to our local delegate, our concerns with that.
And I did forward that at the board's direction. I did forward it.
I felt we had the opportunity, a missed opportunity to deny that. Could we have denied only in that situation, only paid back with no interest? I mean, just
State law says we have to pay.
that we had to pay it back.
What it says is if the locality imposes an interest charge on payments to the locality, delinquent payments to the locality, then it must also provide interest for any refund of taxes on an erroneous assessment or whatever the reason, the interest must be included.
And the interest was the same. It was
The interest rate is the same. The dollars change.
right.
Oh, I thought it had to be reimbursed at 10% interest.
It does, but it's going to be a whole lot greater. 10% is going to be a whole lot greater on 2,000 than 200.
We could make a business of this, though.
Better interest than you get the bank. And what is the county's rate that we charge? Is that 10%?
10%.
If it were less, then our reimbursement would be the same amount,
That's
would
correct.
be less.
That's correct. Now, there was one where the statute, I believe it was veterans tax exemption. If I remember correctly, there was one where the statute specifically provided that the refund would not include interest.
Well, I'm satisfied. Gentlemen, any questions, any further comments?
Well, hopefully this will be a good year and we'll get a lot of these things accomplished in this.
Spencer, do you have what you need from us on this? Okay,
Consensus?
then
We got consensus. I've reviewed the 4 items. We got consensus. So in that particular case, you wouldn't necessarily need to. You can just, we can note that in the item in the regular agenda.
okay, and no vote needed. Okay,
And I'll craft a letter for the chairman's signature.
okay. So if there's nothing else, do I have a motion to close the work session?
So moved.
Yep.
I'll second.
All right, you're in line.
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
and I vote yes.
Okay, we'll return to at 5:30 with the regular meeting. Until such time, I will mute the mic and
Evening. I'd like to begin the January 24th, 2022 Board of Supervisors meeting. Call to order at 5:31. Mr. Suter, would you please take roll?
Yes, please. I'll call the roll of people I see present. Supervisor Day,
Here,
Supervisor Lyons.
Here.
And Vice Chair Ayers.
Here. Okay. If you all would stand, please, for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance to follow. Let us pray tonight. We will be of service to our constituents by carefully listening to each and every voice among us with respect, patience, and the sincere desire to act for the common good for our citizens. Grant us the wisdom to govern amid conflicting interests and the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement. God, thank you for the ability to be involved in good and useful work and the honor of bearing these responsibilities. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Per the Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, Executive Order 72, persons who have been fully vaccinated for the COVID-19 virus are not required to wear a mask. We will hold citizens' comments near the beginning of the meeting. We will do our best to take citizen comments remotely. There are two options for citizens to offer comment. To join by telephone, you may dial in on one of the numbers listed on the county website. Webinar ID and password are there for your convenience. Citizens wishing to simply view the meeting live or after the fact can do so on the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors YouTube channel, also available on the county website. If you wish to make a citizen comment as a Zoom meeting participant, you will use the raise your hand feature.
I'm sorry.
My fault.
Changes to the agenda. Are there any? Gentlemen? No. Alrighty. Recognitions and presentations. Are there any recognitions?
Well, yes, I do have one announcement to make tonight. It's with mixed emotion that I have to announce that after 10.5 years of exemplary service, Director of Fiscal Services Steve Bolster is leaving us for another position with the Virginia Department of Health. I just learned about this on Friday, or I would have had something a little more formal to present tonight. Steve's last day with the county will be February 9th. In the meantime, we're making plans to help transition through his departure, and replace his position, which will obviously be no small task. He has done a yeoman's job while he's been here. We're also circling up staff to work through the task of budget formation. And I would, and again, we're planning on something to send Steve off a little bit with our appreciation, our great appreciation. I would just ask that when you see Steve on the street or anywhere in the building, that you do wish him well. This will be his last regular meeting, although we have one more budget meeting, that public budget meeting. And more to come on that.
Thank you. Citizens' comments. Comments are welcome at this time that do not pertain to the public hearings. Public hearings begin at 6 p.m. and the comments pertaining to those matters should be held until that time. Is there anyone signed up to speak in person?
No one signed up.
Okay. Is there anyone with raised hand on Zoom that wishes to speak?
No, ma'am.
Were there any written or email comments?
No, ma'am.
All right. And we'll go on to the approval of the November 22nd, 2021 minutes. Is there a motion to approve these minutes?
Second?
Supervisor Day,
yes.
Supervisor Lyons.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Consideration of the school's appropriation resolution. Steve.
Good evening. If you go to your board docs package, you'll see there's a school division appropriation resolution linked to the school cafeteria fund. That's Fund 56. And you can see it's a carryover grant. The total amount is for $20,388. If there's no questions, staff's recommendation is to approve the resolution as presented.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve?
Second,
Supervisor Lyons,
Yes.
Supervisor Day,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Update from the Virginia Horse Center.
Yes, back in 2008, the EDA and the Board of Supervisors approved support of a $730,000 Cornerstone Bank loan, the proceeds of which were intended to provide for necessary capital maintenance and improvements to the facility. The debt service was and is supported by a 1% increase in the transient occupancy or lodging tax by both the county and the city of Lexington. Part of that agreement does include a requirement for the Virginia Horse Center to make an annual report on usage of the funds to the EDA, followed by reports to the Board of Supervisors. Originally scheduled for January 18th, the update to the EDA was moved to February in light of the weather that we were having. Also, in light of the fact that this is just an update and no recommendation is needed from the EDA, we decided to go ahead with the board report this evening and then present it to the EDA in February. Attached in your package is some information regarding Virginia Horse Center projects and just to re-clarify, all the funding of the $730,000 has been reported on in the past, and so this is just generally an update to in keeping with the requirement of the agreement, and also gives the Virginia Horse Center an opportunity to just present some good, any good news they have. And so Glenn Petty is with us tonight, and also Sandra Thomas, and sorry, and so he's the CEO and she's the CFO. So they're here to present some information to you tonight.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. And this is my first time to appear before this body, and it is a pleasure to be here as a resident of Lexington and Rockbridge County. I started work at the Virginia Horse Center on May the 1st. And so a lot of the history of what Spencer was mentioning, our CFO, Sandra, is very familiar with that. So when we start talking about numbers, I'll let her speak. But just for anybody on the supervisors or the in the audience or on Zoom, just to say a few words about the Virginia Horse Center. We are now have been here for about 35 years. And as you would expect after 35 years, there's some deferred maintenance that we have been working on, and the numbers that you have refers to that. But for those of you that are not that familiar with the Virginia Horse Center, we have 600 acres. We have 300 acres, interestingly enough, of grass that we keep mowed in the summertime. We have 10 acres of roof, 745 stalls, and 14 arenas. We have between 80 and 100 events at the Horse Center annually. And the thing that I was amazed in 2021, I characterized the Horse Center as something similar to a hotel and convention complex. And instead of hotel rooms, we rent stalls. Instead of ballrooms, we rent the Coliseum and we rent the rings. In 2021, we had the best year in history for stall rentals, and we rented over 51,000 stall nights. So we have, despite COVID, our exhibitors from all over the country are ready to get out. And when I say from all over the country, the interesting thing is that we had a major reining here that had exhibitors from all over the nation, and 3 of the Yellowstone actors were here showing with us. So the Horse Center brings a lot of people from out of the area here. And we love being a part of, again, the Rockbridge area and Lexington and the other surrounding communities. Sandra, do you want to present the numbers over? And the one thing, and I'm not sure what the procedure are, but we updated in order to get new events, our facilities guide. I brought copies for the supervisors and for the audience, and also our 2022 calendar. And one of the things that we did through the Commissioner of Agriculture's office, Virginia Agriculture, we have an ad in that promoting all the events that are here and coming to the Rockbridge area, and that will go to all the General Assembly, to the libraries across Virginia and welcome stations, as well as a lot of ag organizations. So these I have for anyone that would like to. Sandra?
Good evening. It's great to see y'all. I think this is the first time I've presented in front of the three of you that because of COVID, we've not been to the Board of Supervisors recently. So it's nice to see all of you. As Spencer mentioned, there was a $730,000 loan that was used for deferred maintenance. We reported last year, I think in writing, that all of that had been spent. And so I'm here to just say that, you know, it's all been spent. We are enjoying the amenities that we were able to put that money for. And a lot of that was things that need to be done in order for us to do some additional road work, barns, and additional rings, because it was stormwater management and roads were a lot of the what we have spent that money on. After that, we have spent about $3.3 million on through private donations. We have renovated 2 of our barns. We have built a new a memorial park and have a new big dressage arena that will allow us to have international level dressage events. And in fact, we have a dressage, we're going to have our first one in March. No, May, sorry. And then lastly, there's a page that shows you some of the things that we've been able to fund from operations. We have paved the front entrance, we've replaced a retaining wall, and we've installed security cameras at the facility. Glenn mentioned that we've had a very strong show season. Horse shows are socially distanced by nature. So 2020 was a very strong show season when we were able to reopen. 2021 has also been a strong show season. We had shows that couldn't go to where they normally showed. Some of the grounds in Maryland were not reopened in 2020. But that show came to Virginia Horse Center. Everybody liked it so much that the Maryland Horse and Pony Show is now at the Virginia Horse Center and not in Maryland. We also have had a very strong financial year. We received about $665,000 in CARES Act funding. And we were able to cover our operational costs with our operations and philanthropy to a large degree. So we were able to bank a big majority of that's CARES Act money. And so for the first time in my history with the Horse Center, and I think for the first time in a long time, we actually have some working capital. And as opposed to trying to figure out where payroll is coming from next week, I know I've got payroll for the next couple of months, and I can actually pay bills on time, which is a really great feeling, but and a big change from the Horse Center. So I think Glenn and I would welcome any questions that you have.
Gentlemen?
Oh, and I just would like to add that the last financials you saw were through October, and I hope to have December's done by the end of the month.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Thank you for that update. We'll move on then to the consideration of legislative priorities. Spencer?
So that in the immediately preceding work session, for anyone in the audience, the Board of Supervisors did have a discussion on whether or not to support or how to support legislative priorities put forth by the Virginia Association of Counties, which represents counties across the Commonwealth. And they came to consensus that they generally support the legislative priorities as were posted on the agenda, and had several items that they would like to emphasize. And so I'm going to draft a letter for the chairman's signature, and we will remit that to the by consensus. We'll remit it to our General Assembly representatives.
Okay. Would you like to share the 4 items that we would like to stress?
Yes. First one that came up was renewable energy. The VACO supports generally renewable energy installations, and the thought was to put a caveat on that, such that any adjacent locality that might be impacted by renewable energy project be able to weigh in. And I'm paraphrasing on that project that the adjacent locality is considering. Number 2, this is in regard to the finance portion of the legislative priorities. The General Assembly needs to take into account local costs associated with state-supported salary increases. For example, raises for teacher raises for standards of quality positions, and also compensation board positions do not all account for the additional local positions, which must then be funded by the locality. So essentially, when the state provides raises, which are greatly appreciated, there is a significant cost to the locality for additional positions that are required to run whatever operation that is. The third thing was, of course, something that the board has already taken action on, and that's for the state to fund actual costs of incarceration for prisoners, especially state prisoners or inmates, and also to take state responsible inmates into the state system as soon as they possibly can to avoid additional local cost. And finally, continued support for generally for funding of rural broadband.
Thank you. All righty, we'll move on to appointments. Rockbridge Regional Jail Commission annual appointments for 2022. This appointment was carried over from the last meeting. Calendar year 2021 appointments were Mr. Suter, Citizen Representative Ed Hoskin, and Glasgow Town Manager George Hayfield. The town appointment alternates year to year between Glasgow and Goshen. Goshen Town Council has recommended Mr. Jeff Schaefer. Are there nominations for the Jail Commission?
Yeah, I'd like to move that we reappoint Mr. Suter and Mr. Hoskins and appoint Mr. Jeff Schaefer from Goshen.
Great. All right. Miss,
Yes.
sorry, Mr. Day.
Yes.
And the supervisor Ayers votes yes. Sorry, Mr. Lyons. Community Service Board member Jade Nick, no longer serving after December 2021. Do we have anything there for that?
We've got a couple of recently received applications. Typically, the board, well, by practice, the Board of Supervisors has asked county staff to make sure that any appointee or any nomination for an appointee, we do check to see that they're current with their taxes and that type of thing, and we've not had opportunity to do that yet.
Okay. Community Service Board member Malcolm Brownlee resigned. There are 2 openings on the CSB. After questions on the last board meeting, staff has provided the board with clarification. Has staff received any applications for the seats?
Well, yes, I skipped ahead a little bit. We did
Okay.
receive 2, and very recent. We haven't had a chance to go
Okay,
through our processes with
That's
those.
fine.
My recommendation would be based on that is that you set this off to the next meeting.
okay. Rural Board of Directors, to fill unexpired term for David Hinty. We have not received an application for that, and we are going to wait yet another month to fill that position. All righty. we are finished for now, and we will move on to the public hearings that will begin at 6 p.m. Is that
Yeah, you have to wait till 6. So my recommendation would be that you just have a brief recess until 6
Okay.
o'clock.
enjoy?
I like the way you run this meeting.
Okay, we are live.
Well, we will begin the public hearings. At this time, we will begin our public hearings. Just a reminder, if you wish to speak during one or more of the public hearings, please sign up if attending in person. If attending virtually, please use the raise your hand feature. Chris?
Our first public hearing for this evening is agenda item number 13. That's Lewis W. and Kendra R. Hamilton. If you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen. Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton are in attendance this evening to represent the project. And this is a special exception permit to operate a campground in the A1 zoning district. A little bit of details on the property. It's located at 40 Black Bear Trail. That's a Vesuvius address owned by Lewis W. Jr. and Kendra R. Hamilton. Tax map number 65-2-2A and consists of 2.48 acres, 2.848 acres per tax records with one single family dwelling on the property. Again, the single family dwelling is identified as 40 Black Bear Trail. It should be noted that Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton also currently own two adjacent parcels to the north. Those two adjacent parcels total approximately 13.3 acres per tax records. They also have a single family dwelling on them, but they are not part of this application. Only tax parcel 62-2-A is part of the application itself. The property is located in agricultural and limited use districts. That's the A1 zoning district. And again, there's a single family dwelling on the property. As far as the special exception proposal itself, per section 602.03-2 of the County of Rockbridge Land Development Regulations, campgrounds are used by special exception in the A1 zoning district. Applicants have constructed a canvas glamping tent to the property. The glamping tent has one bed, one bathroom, a stand-up shower, and served with electricity. There are no other campsites or additional units part of this application. On January 12th, 2022, the Planning Commission held its public hearing and has recommended approval of the special exception with the following conditions. Number one, substantial compliance with site map titled Hamilton Campground Special Exception Site Map dated December 15th, 2021. That's the map that's in your package that identifies the approximate location of the glamping tent. Number two, campground is limited to a single camping unit, no motorhome, tow-behind campers, such as pop-up campers, Troy haulers, teardrop trailers, stand-up trailers, etc., or other recreational vehicles permitted. Number three, campground is limited to 2 vehicles, not to exceed 5 people. And number four, final is approval contingent upon final VDOT, Office of Fire and Rescue and Emergency Management, and Health Department approvals. With that, I'd like to turn this portion of the presentation over to Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton to review the additional details of the project and answer any questions that the board may have.
Hello. Welcome. Please state your name.
Lou Hamilton.
Mr. Hampton, go right ahead.
Well, we own 2 cabins, like Chris said, on the property, and it's another one we hope to acquire this Thursday, actually. That'll be everything on our side of the creek, and we put a glamping tent behind the second cabin that we just finished in October, and built a road to it. It's pretty nice, and just want to rent that out. We're not wanting to do a campground. We just want to be able to rent our tent out.
Had an opportunity to take a look at that. Very nice tent. Does it have its own drain field?
It will. That's part of the health department regulations. John Burleson's already been out, found the site. So with you guys' approval, we will install that.
Okay. And that's before it's used. And,
Yes, ma'am.
and the water source is where?
It's from the well for the other house.
Okay. Good. How about your neighbors? How did they feel about this project? All good there?
Well, I think it was a misconception. When the letter went out campground, they thought the worst. It would be everything that said travel trailers, motor homes.
Right.
You can't even see this tent from the road. You can't hardly see it from our back, furthest back cabin.
It's quite a beautiful tent. Is there a picture there? Is that
There was
part
a
of it?
picture provided in the
Yes,
package,
no,
I
I
believe,
saw it.
and
I
I
just
can pull
wondered
that up if need.
if anybody wanted to see it. Good. I know. I think it's beautiful. Very, very nice. All right. Well, anything else that you'd want to, do you want to read any letters?
If we open a public hearing.
Okay,
yes, ma'am,
we'll do
there's
that.
one letter to read.
Okay. All right. If there are no other questions, we'll open the public hearing.
Thank you. There's no one physically signed up to speak, but we may recognize anyone that wants to
Okay.
speak.
Okay. Anybody would like to speak on this?
We do have one previously received letter. It's addressed to the Rockbridge County, as I'll be less than 3 minutes, I won't start. It's to the Rockbridge County Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors. We, the undersigned local landowners and residents, wish to voice our opposition to the rezoning being contemplated on Irish Creek Road, tax map 65-2-2A. We absolutely oppose any sort of campground or any other sort of venue. This is a peaceful, tranquil, and undisturbed corner of paradise, and we adamantly hope to keep it that way. Signed the underlying or the landowners Tony, Ray, Tyree, and wife with address of 2143 Irish Creek Road. Mr. I think it's Clifford Tomlin at 34 Long Rifle Lane, Georgia Pippin at 47 Long Rifle Lane, and Mr. Richard Connor at 2049 Irish Creek Road. And no one else is signed up to speak on the sign-in sheet.
Okay. Then I'll close the public hearing. Is there any discussion?
No, no one's raised them online.
Okay. Gentlemen? Have any questions? Mhm.
We approve the request.
Second.
All righty. Supervisor Day,
Yes.
Supervisor Lyons,
Yes.
and the vice chair votes yes. All righty. We'll move on to the consideration of the redistricting plan.
Did,
Did I do that one? Am I missing
One
something?
probably one.
Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
Well, there's two.
Oh, exactly. Okay,
things.
on 14,
Number 14 has been removed. Crown Hardwood has requested a postponement of the review of their special exception application until the February 28th meeting, and that request has been granted. So that has been stricken from the agenda. So our next agenda item is that we're acting on is number 15, and that's Rockbridge County. So I actually do not have a PowerPoint presentation on this one. I do have a shared screen though.
all righty.
If you bear with me here. So as described in summary information, this had come up by a local landowner wishing to develop really an cultural arts center. So under current ordinance, we do have provisions. Rockbridge County current ordinance does have provisions, what's called a cultural/music center, which is currently defined as a facility where admission fee is charged and groups of or individuals gather on a regular basis for the purpose of listening to or participating in live music conducted within an enclosed structure and on an intermittent basis where dance, arts, crafts, and food festivals, classes, and demonstrations may be held in the immediate vicinity, So that's current section 302.56 under the land development regulations. So when this request came in, there was some discussion of a zoning text amendment to allow for essentially a cultural arts center. The planning commission and staff looked at this section of a cultural music center already, and we started to modify that particular section, but then realized that we're dealing with two different, in our opinions, we're dealing with two different uses, one a cultural arts center and then one a cultural music center. So in your package and as advertised, we have defined cultural arts center as 302.56, and then a cultural music center, which is 302.56A. So very similar definitions to the existing cultural music center definition, but it really separates the two out. So the cultural arts center would allow for some indoor and outdoor activities. And you would have to have an indoor activity to have that in the vicinity, while a cultural music center is limited to an enclosed structure. So that is one difference between the two. So after the proposed definitions that are shown on the screen here, the Planning Commission has recommended approval to allow it by special exception in the A2 zoning district, and that would be by 603.0318 and 18A respectively. And then in the agricultural transitional zone, the same way, it's a use by special exception under 603B.03 -13 and 13A respectively. And then as a permitted use, both would be a permitted use in the general business zone, both being the cultural music center and the cultural arts center. That concludes staff's presentation, reviewing the definitions and where it would be provided for. Obviously, happy to answer any questions or review any additional details that the board may need.
Okay. Then we'll open the public hearing.
Yes, ma'am. First signed up is Mr. James Panabaker.
Hello.
Good evening. I'm James Panabecker. I'm a member of the Thunderbridge Campground LLC, which about last spring, you approved our special exception for a campground that included art studios focused on patrons of the camp. What we'd like to be able to do is make those art studios, art and craft studios available to the public as well, the general public, whether or not they're patrons of the campground. I wanted to mention that 5 commenters expressed support to the Planning Commission. 2 of those also expressed concern about the outdoor volume, the music volume for the music center, and Mr. Sladen pointed out that that could be handled through the special exception process. Eben Osby was one of the commenters. He mentioned that arts and music fit well into our country life, being attractive to tourists, while also being compatible with our rural lifestyles and light on the land and the environment. Susan Brady said it would be an asset for Rockbridge County, bringing the chance to perform or exhibit and hear or see music and art in parts of the county where opportunities currently do not exist. She pointed out that outdoor venues are also good at the time of a pandemic. Anyway, I just wanted to be here to encourage you to approve the text amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
There's no one physically signed up. There's no one else signed up to speak.
Okay, not on Zoom.
No, ma'am.
And, all right. Are there any written comment? None.
We did receive several, as Mr. Panabaker stated, we did receive several written comments, but they were all addressed to the members of the Planning Commission. And so I did not take the time to read those during this public comment.
Okay. So with that, I'll close the public hearing. Is there any discussion?
What was the vote in the Planning Commission?
It was, we had one absence. It was 4-0 unanimously to recommend approval. I believe it was, yes.
I move to approve.
I'll second.
All righty. Supervisor Lyons,
Yes.
Supervisor Day,
Yes.
and the Vice Chair votes yes. Congratulations. All righty. We'll move on to the consideration of the redistricting plan. Mr. Suter?
Yes, just similar to last meeting, I won't hash through all the detail unless you all request me to. This has been presented to the board on multiple occasions since last fall. Working through the process, and the information in your package is the same information presented at the last meeting when you had your first public hearing on this matter. The redistricting plan that the board had approved to be advertised has been duly advertised. And to date, we've not received any comments on the plan. This is the final scheduled public hearing. And after taking public comment, the board has the option of sending the final local redistricting plan to the Office of the Attorney General for consideration. Certification of no objection is deemed to have been given if the Office of the Attorney General does not interpose an objection within 60 days of the submission, or if upon good cause shown, the OAG says sooner that no objection will be made.
All righty. Then we'll open the public hearing. Is there anybody here to speak on this?
No one physically signed up.
Okay, and no one on Zoom. Now close the public hearing. Is there any discussion? Motion.
I moved that we send it on to the Attorney General.
Second that. All righty. Supervisor Lyons?
Yes.
Supervisor Day?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes. As part of the agenda, there was a closed session, but we are not going to be doing that. So we will, is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? Supervisor Lyons?
Yes.
Supervisor Day?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes. You're done.